You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only 1 or 2 good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
Yeah, we got the CD called Punk. It's loaded with our favorite tunes, man.
Yeah.
Just listen.
She is founder of a group called Parents of Punkers. This is literally an organization of parents who looked up and suddenly their kids have purple hair.
What they want, I don't know. Stand at the crossroads. I've got the flag right.
And even further back than that, one can hear it in the music and you can see it in the photos. The first punk himself, Woody Guthrie.
She rose from her blanket with a gun in each hand. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Honey, lay off them shoes and don't you step on my blue suede shoe.
Johnny Cash was a total punk, playing where he wanted, when he wanted, and how he wanted, refusing to compromise anything about himself for the sake of his record label.
I keep the ends out for the tie that binds, because you're mine, I walk the line.
Tell me, where did you sleep last night? Gone like a cool. I will follow you. I brought a thrill.
Every generation has its own group of people who march to the beat of a different drummer. In the 50s, it was the beatniks. In the 60s, it was the hippies. Today, it is the punk rockers. Now, I guess we've all seen them at one time or another. The spiked orange hair, the lethal-looking jewelry, lots of leather. This morning, we've invited 5 punk rockers to come here and explain and tell us why they are the way they are.
Oh, well, I love you, gal, yes, I love you, Peggy Sue.
He's my baby. He's a wildcat.
Come on, everybody.
But you know, in the 50s, the beatniks, even though it's like you're revolting against something, perhaps, there still is a conformity. You can see that you all basically have things in common. You do look alike. How can you say that it's an individual expression when there truly are? Your hair is basically the same and you have tattoos and things.
I don't have any tattoos.
Don't you wanna go?
All night long, rain all day, rain all night, rain, 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 rain.
Hey, these bands have sex appeal. They have their own look now. I mean, you can't say someone like him isn't good looking, you know what I mean?
Let's go! Where's your mind? Where's my love you? Got a chance at last. The things we wanna do. Don't hesitate, I can't wait. Love me.
But will you love me tomorrow?
Here's how I define punk. It's a free space. It's just a free space. It could be called jazz. It could be called hip-hop. It could be called blues or rock or beat. It could be called techno. It's just a new idea.
Well, I never seen a dolly and wine so much. Fever-eyed Betty and all of that.
Will you like this? The peppermint twist.
Let's see what I could see.
Culture, it changed my attitude towards what was possible, and I think I learned to go against the system a little bit.
On here, serving USA. Where they want, and I want.
Little boxes
In some ways, maybe it should die, because then it could be reborn, but I think we've reached the point where there's always going to be punk in some way. I mean, the sound of punk and the look of punk is not necessarily part of it anymore. I mean, boy bands look like Johnny Rotten or Sid Vicious, and pop punk bands sound like boy bands.
You got me going, you got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I guess it's midnight.
We all ended up getting labeled because people have, in society, they have to classify you. They have to put you in a category because they have to explain you. If they can't explain you, then people start getting nervous. What are these kids up to? What's going on with them?
Youth has always had a way of trying something different. Flappers in the 1920s, Elvis in the 1950s.
Rock and roll has got to go.
For your life, I'll give you everything and more, and that's for sure. You're telling me that you'll be true.
One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
They say, hurry, hurry, 'cause they can't you love it.
What they do is pick the most sensational, stories, sex, drugs, orgies, I mean, like, the whole article is supposed to be on the music scene, and he ends up writing about my sex life. Who cares about my sex life?
I do.
Oh, well, Regis.
Are you a boy? Are you a girl? I see the girls go by dressed in their summer clothes.
And it happened again in the 1960s.
Have you ever been to London? I think it's going to be like Easter and Christmas and New Year's and your birthday all together.
Push it too hard every night and day. You push it too hard, push it too hard. Hey, you're gonna go with the money in your hand. Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying. Brown thing, you make my heart sing. Hey, well, I hate you with a passion, baby.
And alongside punks and skinheads, there are straight-looking punks, even long hairs.
Punk seems cool, I've been into it for years,
Yeah, hold on. I have something to say here. Punk rock is not about long hair, all right?
Have to hide my face, go some other place.
You're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead and out of this world.
I can't get your love, I can't get affection. I'm not your stepping stone.
I'm gonna tell you about my town. I'm gonna tell you a big bad story, baby.
I got a little girl who's sweet as she can be.
The faces change, and the costumes, and the rap. Peace and freedom in the 60s, anarchy in the 80s.
Anarchy would be great after a while. At first it'd be chaos, but then after all the weak people died, then there'd be all strong people, and I think that it would be pretty nice.
Last night I saw strange movie. Everyone was in bed.
Well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is away. Now, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is away.
You're gonna wake up one morning as the sun greets the dawn.
Trapped inside a night, but I'm a day and I go oop, bip, bip, oop, bip, bip, yeah!
I'm just talking about my generation. My generation. My generation, baby.
Most people are under the misconception that punk rock is a very specific sound or style. The Velvet Underground were absolutely punk in the fact that they showed no regard for the musical norms of their time, and in that process they created some of the most outright revolutionary experimental music the world has ever heard.
Gonna try for the kingdom if I can, 'cause it makes me feel like I'm a man. Then came the song. My baby does the hanky-panky.
But the spirit of punk goes back to the anti-war hippies, the people who did all the revolt in 1968 in France, goes back to the Beat generation, the early rock and rollers. The spirit is where you find it, basically. And you'll find it in some of these movies, even if the people who made them don't look like punks. So it's where you find it.
Overthrow dictators if they're red. Fucking amen. CIA man.
Love you, mama, all night long. You wet, mama, gonna love you, baby, all night, yeah. I've gotta find myself some action to satisfy my soul.
There was very poor communication until we went into counseling. And it almost broke up our family.
Communication breakdown, it's always the same. Having a nervous breakdown drive me insane. Everyone is saying what to do, what to think, but to ask permission when you feel you want to blink. Revolution, well, no.
This is the first time the local news media have taken a close look at Boise's punk culture.
It is the counterculture of our age. They're called punks. And depending on who you ask, there are between a couple dozen and several hundred of them in Boise. One thing is certain, though. They have created a world of their own here.
Time won't let me, time won't let me, time won't let me. Turn off the jams, motherfucker! Yes! It's alright.
This is not a fight. This is slam dancing. The number of injuries is surprisingly minute.
So messed up, I want you here. In my room, I want you here.
And the poor people want what the rich people's got. And the skinny people want what the fat people's got. And the fat people want what the skinny people's got.
Ooh, they're red, white, blue. And when the band plays, hey, blue machine. Ooh, they want the Canada Jew.
Once a month or so at this American Legion Hall in West Boise, some punk bands get together with a couple hundred people. It's called a gig. The movement is called slam dancing, and it can get pretty acrobatic.
Hot scent. I'm walking in the hot scent. Making love on the hot scent. And I can feel the new tomorrow coming on. And I don't know why I have to make a song.
You wanna do what? You wanna do what? I
I told you what, I told you what, you wanna do what?
Some say it's a life after birth.
Punk proved to people, and it is now ingrained in people, that what they thought was impossible is not impossible.
You call the people of the future generation.
Molly came to some, and she got money out to know.
Here I am, all alone in the empty graveyard at midnight.
On almost any afternoon or weekend, you'll also find punks skateboarding. Cliff Green, a student at Boise High, comes to this ramp a lot after school.
Skating was real popular in punk to begin with, and it's like I got into hardcore, and then someone, you know, skating just came with it.
Unique hairstyles like Cliff's are a trademark of punks.
Leader of the pack. My folks were always putting him down. Dirty sweet, you're my girl. Get it on, bang a gong, get it on. School's out forever. School went blown to pieces.
Vicious, you hit me with a flower. You do it every hour. Hey baby, you're so vicious.
Even a Japanese kabuki record I remembered later when I started smoking pot in my hippie teenage years and thought, cool, this sounds like Hawkwind, I like this.
But she does all these things that I can't stand. I get jealous, she stays with another man. She cried, I'm sad, but I won't. Oh, she cried. While the fly tried to break our bones, just the beer lights to fly, just so we missed about his land.
This house may look like any other, but the punks call it a thrash house, kind of their equivalent to a hippie commune.
All about that personality crisis. You got it while it was hot. But frustration, darling, that's what you got. I gotta tell you about the personality. Yeah. Well, my time's come and my time's gone. To a one I belong. When I was down, you only go up. But now I guess I come far enough.
You look funny. Is that purposeful?
Every night I hear his laughter echo through the lane. Frankenstein had nothing on him. Dracula was tame.
Tell me about punk rock, because I have heard, I've read all kinds of reviews.
I'll tell you about punk rock. Punk rock is a word used by dilettantes and heartless manipulators about music that takes up the energies and the bodies and the hearts and the souls and the time and the minds of young men who give what they have to it and give everything they have to it. And it's a term that's based on contempt. It's a term that's based in fashion, style, elitism, Satanism, and everything that's rotten about rock and roll.
Love in the middle of a firefight. Money gotta strike me blind. Somebody gotta save my soul. Really sticking in my mind. I'm the world's 5,000 boy.
don't like the label. Is that right?
I don't like to hear it come out of someone's mouth.
Okay. Where do you like to hear it come out of?
So strange, I like to tell you everything I see. Oh, I see a man at the back, as a matter of fact, his eyes are as red as the sun. And the girl in the corner, let no one ignore her, cause she thinks she's the passionate one. King Cat, but King Rudy they never tried. King Cat.
Next to the punk lifestyle, there is the music. 22-year-old Sean Wyatt hosts a radio show called Mutant Pop every Wednesday night on KBSU. He plays 4 hours of punk rock, and the phone rings often with requests.
Are you telling teenagers to go down the basement, sniff glue, and...
No, those songs are more tongue-in-cheek. We're not telling anyone to sniff glue or hit people over the head with bats.
Now I want to sniff some glue. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I saw you out the other night. I saw somebody hold you tight. A rock set. I wondered who it could be.
I didn't know her and I saw her in the street, and just because she's into punk or hardcore, and she was like, you know, need some food or something, I'd spy for her because we're like a big family. You don't find that in like heavy metal and a lot of other kinds of music. Most of them are into drugs and like destruction and stuff. We're not into that.
What I like to do, teasing them with your heels, freeze them with your name. I know what I'm at, baby. You better shut it up. I'm gonna beat you up. I know what I'm at, though. Until I found my own song. Everywhere that I've been, but you know, baby, I'm the next big thing, oh yeah!
Johnny wanted to move, but the movie kept moving as planned. The boy gripped Johnny, he pressed him against a locker. He drove it in, he drove it home, he drove it deep in Johnny. The boy disappeared, Johnny found his knees, started pushing his head against the locker.
You didn't have to wait to start doing something. If you wanted to do it, you could try doing it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Run, 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 run up. Going faster miles an hour.
Dancing to the rock and roll on Saturday night, dancing to the rhythm and all its soul on Saturday night.
See you singing. He's coming to take us away. Let's sing. He's coming to take us away.
What made punk necessary in the first place was how bad the 70s got, where there was arena rock, almost like Roman gladiator shows or something, or Leni Riefenstahl, Triumph of the Will. There was crap disco, there was crap adult rock like the Eagles or something. and we were a slightly younger generation. We wanted rock that actually rocked. And so punk brought back the spirit of rock and roll. Sure, there's some 70s rock that's good, but that whole shtick was so bad by the late 70s that punk had to happen.
Oh, let's go! Oh, let's go! Oh, let's go! The moment is set up. You're in Taiwan.
Are you adding more violence to the society with your music? Are you creating violence with your music?
Well, actually, like the music's violent, but it's like it gets all the aggression out of the kids, you know. Like after they see a show of ours, they're ready to collapse, you know.
We sat in the night with my hands cupped and my eyes side. I looked at your life and your style. Wanted nothing more.
Politicians in my eyes. Always trying to be slick when they tell us they're responsible for sending young men to die.
Looks like fun. Yes, it is. And tomorrow night in part 2, we'll explain the thinking behind the music, dress, and lifestyle you heard and saw tonight.
Personally, I don't really care if I offend people or not. I find the society quite a bit more offensive to me. And people who think that things are fine, whether they, you know, with the invasions they do or all those things or this obnoxious MTV, people to me have to defend that. I don't have to defend myself.
I got a feeling inside of me. It's kind of strange, like a story scene. I don't know why, I don't know why. I get these things have gotta be. I've got a new rose, I've got a good.
So let's start with the first big misunderstanding, and that's that punk started in the late 70s with bands like the Ramones and some silly-haired posers from the UK who could barely play their instruments.
I can remember when we didn't wanna see my face. I can remember when we put me in my place. You get down and out, I wanna feel it move.
We could blow this place apart if we wanted to.
See the Dead Boys. I'm here to see how great rock and roll is supposed to be done. How should it be done? With ain't no pyrotechnics, no phony showmanship, just pure rock and roll energy, pure guts, pure stamina.
Mainstream magazines like New West eye punk fashion, and punk literature spreads via tabloids ominously tagged Slash and Night Voices. Punk also has its own history. It has been around since 1978, maybe earlier, when the Sex Pistols made their mark in England by channeling working-class anger into bitter, slashing lyrics.
I am an anti-Christ. I am an anarchist. Don't know what I want, but I know how to get it. I want to destroy, pass it by.
Ramones took the vitality of American groups and added a blatantly political message. The punks didn't catch on in America, although bands like the Sex Pistols did make a mark. They were the most publicized because of Sid Vicious. Vicious was arrested in connection with the death of his girlfriend, and he died weeks after from a drug overdose.
You're gonna love me and leave me.
What kind of a comparison would you make between a song like Blitzkrieg Bop and Sheena?
Well, Sheena's like, they're both kind of pop oriented, but Sheena was like we love surf music, and we thought we'd write a surf song, and that's Sheena.
Well, New York City really has it all. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Sheena is a bone rocker. Sheena is a bone rocker.
New Wave means loud rock and roll dance band like the Ramones. It means the angry punk politics of the Clash, and it also means a sort of intellectual art rock typified by the Talking Heads.
I mean, I would hate to be thought that we didn't think about things, you know, but I think that our music is really meant to be felt as much as anything.
What is felt is more than a dance beat. Talking Heads are as deliberately provocative as other new wave groups. Their songs express what they think modern life is all about: absurdity and paranoia. This one's called Psycho Killer.
Psycho Killer has to say better. Run away.
I think we get called intellectual or cerebral or whatever. Probably just because our words and the way we dress and whatnot is a little different than the rock stereotype.
The Talking Heads, the noise of the new wave, is experimental music. The punk movement has subsided, but the key remaining representative is the Clash.
Clash are certainly very important. Clash came along in the wake of the Sex Pistols. They were one of the original punk bands. The whole punk thing is more an attitude than anything else. It's just a very straight-ahead, almost violent message. They're a tremendously vital, exciting live band.
Janie Jones,
To see the Clash is exciting, even crazy. They're singing "We're a Garage Band." The garage is where there are no slick studio sounds, big money, record contracts, or publicity. They'll even die for the cause.
The nurse is looking anxious and she's quivering with fright. I'm looking through Gary Gilmore's eyes. Looking through Gary Gilmore's eyes. Looking through Gary Gilmore's eyes. Looking through Gary Gilmore's eyes.
More than an extension of the nonconformist attitude of the hippies in the 60s. You'll meet some outspoken punks and their parents this morning on Twin Cities Live. How long have you had your hair like that?
You said I acted strange, oh baby, so you. When I'm hungry, to survive.
people wanted to shock a little bit, and maybe they didn't have so much money, and so they just made do. And it was very much, the punk look was very much a do-it-yourself thing.
So what if you're at the front of the line? I'm pushing it. I have the time to argue, as long as I'm alright. What if you were to get to the top? I'll step right in.
I'm saying let me out of here before I was even born in such a gamble with the Philippines. It fascinating to observe what the man does, but when I dive into the wall,
What did you do to it anyway?
What do you mean, what did I do?
What is that?
trying to forget your generation. Use an way I see it. Oh, well, that must justify to me. I'm back in full attack. Never give in until they crack.
It doesn't conform with our rules, but we're learning to cope, and it's a very, very difficult thing.
We live in an animal world, and now my people in an animal world. We live in an animal world, you and me.
There's a man in a shiny suit. He's saying get them off the streets and into the schools. But he knows what he does. He's got a middle-aged brain, and he could never understand what's going on in my head. I'm gonna get him tonight. I'll teach him a lesson, alright.
I'm a fucking great writer, and the only thing that makes me come alive is the music.
Little girls should be seen and not heard. Oh, Bondage! I'm yours! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Punk rock gave me a platform to put a band together and do it my way. And that was good for an 18-year-old kid.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is all my brain and body need. Sex and drugs and rock and roll.
This is Amy before, how old, and Amy after.
Something heavy, something light, something to set your soul alight. Society where a man can be free to be who he wants to be.
It's 1977. Rock and roll is dead.
This is a modern world. This is a modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am?
Well, my wife and I have been involved in theater for 30 years, give or take a little, and so what I see here is a lot of costume work. And it's technically very good costume work.
Racing lady says you ain't so cool.
Punks go to an awful lot of trouble to do really first-class first-rate representational art.
Like a snake calling on a phone, I've got no time to be alone. Someone coming at me all the time. You better think I lose my mind.
I've seen a lot to shake me anyhow. Baked and embarrassed, sometimes I admit I even stole. The worst crime that I ever did was playing rock and roll.
Do what you want if it takes your mind. Better do it now cause you won't have time. And never worry if people laugh at you. The fools only laugh cause they envy you. I call the whole wide world. 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 I'm not really higher.
Streaks and tips color glow hair color. When exposed to light, it'll glow in the dark.
It's gonna make you feel bad. It's gonna make you feel sad. Daddy's got a hot one. Daddy's got a hot gun. Daddy's got a hot gun.
They weren't afraid to experiment, like, you know, bands like the Raincoats and Kleenex and stuff like that. I mean, fantastic music.
They're upset with society. They're upset with a non-caring society. And in essence, it's a message. And the first thing that happens is the parents reject them, and then they continue to reject authority.
Well, we're four guys that grew up together in the same neighborhood, almost on the same block, and we always had an interest in rock, and we just got fed up with what we were hearing, and so we just decided to create what we wanted to hear ourselves.
And we started in '74, like the summer of '74, and there was nowhere to play. Like the only place was Max's, and Max's was you had to have a recording contract to play Max's. So we found CBGB's, like it was just a bum bar on the Bowery, and nobody was playing, but like we saw that it could become a scene. Like we wanted to develop it, make it something, you know. So we started playing for Hilly and the Dog, and eventually got up to like 700 people a night, and
there wasn't very many people in the audience at all. And after we were through, someone came over to us and said, "Are you guys a joke? Are you a parody of a rock group or something like that?" And we said, "No." We said, "You know, we're dead serious." And then our audiences just slowly started growing, and you know, and they started getting us off more, and we were getting them off more, and it just developed that way.
I wanna be sedated.
there's a lot of colors we can put in to create whatever design we want.
Michelle Lewis, for example, says she hasn't had her hair done the same way twice in the last 6 years.
I'm having the back a stripe of white on this side, and I'm doing the same thing on the other side when there's going to be a stripe of black through the middle. And I don't know, are we putting any burgundy in it?
In the 70s, the three-piece suit came back into vogue and moved on to the disco floor. And the 80s might see the strangest counterculture yet. Elaine Heck now takes a look at a whole new concept in music and fashion.
Oh, I'm so agitated, run through a washing machine, agitated.
Down all day, up all night. Only want to.
I went from being a beatnik to being a hippie to being a whiz kid.
Most people call them punks. Some don't mind that title, but many claim it's a grossly overused term applied to anyone who's into new music and new fashion.
In my chair, when a voice comes on and yells, don't you try it, you feel alright. Got some green, you brown and smoke, chill your head and clear your throat. Juicy, yeah. I saw a lady and she was naked. I saw a lady, she had no clothes. He claimed he was confused between fact and fantasy. It seems he spent all of his time in front of a TV screen. He was a television addict.
When you can make $1 off it, it gets uploaded into the cultural lexicon. The slang becomes your normal patois of the day. You know, grunge becomes, you know, mom knows grunge now. As soon as mom knows how to say grunge, gotta go.
Gotta break out of this red race. Gonna give my cage on the bug. My lyrical man and your smiling lines. You're on, come and ask for.
If you and I were stuck between us, will this murder never leave us? I can't explain, but that's too bad. I can't refrain, that makes you mad.
Well, an awful lot of the lyrics are about nuclear holocaust, and the album graphics are all skulls with mohawks and that sort of thing.
Gonna top it all over the place. People for the rock and roll on LA coast. point in anything.
The punk scene actually grew out of England, where angry, politically minded bands sang of social upheaval, anarchy, and economic strife. Theirs was a minimal and rebellious sound dubbed punk rock.
I wanna hurt. I wanna hurt. Our teenage dreams so hard to beat. Every time she walks down the street, another girl in the neighborhood.
You sit on the beach with your ping pong beach and you pick your nose and you wiggle your toes. You suck on your thumb like a doggy dum dum and you suck on your heady, he's hitting it ready.
In his book, he analyzes both punk and new wave.
Now, when it's transplanted to the United States, what happens, I think, is that punk rock becomes new wave. All of the style is still there, but there's no political impact anymore.
Tonight, Chris Blackford begins a Fox undercover investigation into this underground world and the message it's sending out. Chris.
Well, it is a message that has hit the mainstream, and perhaps we should all be listening. That same anger and frustration very clearly raised its head this summer during a concert in San Bernardino County, a concert that could be considered a microcosm of what punk has become.
In what is called the pit, tense-looking punks and skinheads circle. The hostility is building.
Unterdrücken, das schaffst du mich nicht. Auch wenn du erst immer wie gab es ein Versuch. Du weißt, dass ich glaub, du bist nicht als dich. Mir ist halt ja zu viel und ich hab genug. Ich häng noch an, Hass bei allen Faschisten. Ich sitz zu Hause, keine Lust zu gar nichts. Ich fühl mich alt und dumm wie meine Omi. Destination Venus, who thought we'll believe that's in us when we cross the miles between us, in between us.
Punk rock bands prime and sometimes taunt the crowd.
You guys are weak. What's up, man? Come on, you guys.
Skinheads, mohawked scalps, and punk-dyed hairdos mixed with fresh-faced teenagers. It's the punk generation.
I know. All us in the shows. Going out my love. And the psycho mafia. I got the fight of the loose. Got the loose on bomb. But if
what you bought me when we got it. Plastic flowers look the same every year.
I couldn't be bothered with my waste of payment. You made me angry, you made my life a wreck. You made me love you and then you regret.
Well, the whole new wave concept, I mean, when it began, it was very pop. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you can name any bands, you mentioned
like the B-52ers, Devo.
I would like to know where this young lady works that she's accepted in an outfit like this. I mean, you
PMA means a positive mental attitude. It's a philosophy or formula that came from this book called Think and Grow Rich, put out by Napoleon Hill. In it, he explains and goes into detail about the positive philosophy and the right avenues and vehicles and formulas that are needed for people to achieve what it is they're trying to achieve. And one of the phrases was positive mental attitude. So then we just decided to take him up on his instructions, decided to put a little bit into our music. And also another thing they talked about was not quitting, not giving up. A quitter never wins and a winner never quits. And anything that the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. But you have to keep that PMA.
Shock value is particularly important to the punk scene, so many of the bands choose names that are pointedly tasteless. Bands like the Dead Kennedys and the Sex Pistols.
California, over Alice, California, over Alice, California, over Alice,
Even more than Kill the Poor, California Uber Alice warns of fascism in disguise. It's not a pro-Nazi song in any way.
Someone's got to watch. It's just a winner book. Someone's got to watch at night. Goes up her head. No fun now. She's dead, dead, dead. She's so scared. She's so upset. Let's get. Tell me what it. Let's get. Tell me what it. Girl on the run. She's got nowhere to go. She ain't got no money. She ain't got any food. She drinks a lot in London. Tries to find a life. She knows she should be home, but she won't remember.
Have you heard the Incesticide record? That's the kind of band we used to be. We used to be more like Gang of Four, new wave influence, like more experimental with more noise and different effects boxes.
kids are still wanting the same thing as they wanted back then, something to express what they're feeling. Marketing fluid, typical girl gets a typical boy. Typical boy gets a typical girl. You were so young. The girls took your bodies and they use them just for their fun. And you call the dead stress, call the dead head on.
An estimated 11,000 punk fans in the crowd, the largest ever in Southern California.
It's not about going against society, it's not about anything, it's just about having fun, that's it. That's all everyone comes out here to do, dude.
So I left me a boat, I went to the corner at the end of the road. When you cracked up notions of how it might be.
But here in the pit, during a breakout of slam dancing, it is a peculiar form of fun.
Get hurt! You gotta get hurt! You gotta get hurt to have fun.
Je suis la femme bionique, artère antistatique, perruque de nylon, utérus en téflon, sa complète silicone, lèvres glacées.
Daddy, tell me how it all looked like some of the prints in a storybook. I make decisions with the sigil, I decided I believe just to see that what the being fun again, I'm trying to say. I keep my love for kicking back. Anything is not because the oath of the night. Here are my true detectives, and you know what I want.
Hey, up! A defiant dab of saliva finds a convenient target. Both gestures showing the screw you attitude embraced by so many punks.
Gave her my drink, it was romance. I told her I loved her, it was
Bodies are lifted over punk fan heads in a concert ritual called crowd surfing.
You saw her last weekend. I wish someone knew. She looked over at you and then she smiled.
They're most upset about a society that seems to want us to conform rather than to be ourselves.
No more pushing and go and build a car. We're ready for the flatliners, another more film. Waiting for a man to like to see the need.
Was standing at the side of the water in a parking lot sitting on the harbor.
They're more clean and, you know, like Pearl Jam and stuff like that. And that's the same thing that happened with punk rock. You know, punk rock was really aggressive and raunchy, and those bands got signed to major labels, and it didn't do too well in the mass media. And so then all these punk rock bands turned into new wave bands, you know? So that's exactly what we are. We're a fucking new wave band.
One way or another, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna get you one way or another. I'm gonna win you. I'm gonna get you.
onlookers flood over the barricade. Part of the game, a familiar one at punk concerts, is to get on stage and leap off into the crowd. It's called stage diving.
Although there were some punk clothes from Seditionaries and Boy in Kings Road, Chelsea, most people couldn't afford those clothes.
I don't wanna go on welfare. I don't wanna be a parasite. I'm a bug, so are you, baby. I wanna use my pictures on you.
And I think probably 90% of the injuries at festival seating concerts are caused by people jumping off the stage into the audience, and you jump on top of people's heads. We're a couple broken necks away from this type of music not touring anymore.
I think that punk rock is the best exercise in rock and roll that's ever been attempted.
When I go being shy, why don't we just get high? Why don't we just try? Why don't we have a night? La 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 la. Never too rough, but you are tough. You're no.
I make my mouth smile. You're gonna watch me. You're gonna watch me. You're gonna watch me.
Nobody is special. Nobody is special. Nobody is special. Nobody is special. Deviants in the streets, obscenities I can't repeat. Decadence and promiscuity.
The concert ends 4 hours early in a ball of smoke.
It was just unbelievable. There was so much that was going on, there was no way to control everything.
In the end, security blamed the bands for baiting the crowd.
It showed the lead singer really controls the crowd and not the security.
Until I get him, well, I give him everything, but he's just not there. I wanna say I love him, but he just don't care. There's a million pictures from my heart, can't really tell me all. Some are big and some are small, and some of them are blow. There is a mother on the side of the room, say, and if you look beneath the blue, you'll see my billionaire.
They get all this information from MTV and VH1, and that's their history of rock, and they find out that, like, well, it's like everything else. It's like school. You're not really getting the full story.
And if a punk concert does not end in violence, even the most dedicated punk rocker admits there is always at least one fight. Some note the same could be said of a Raiders game. But clearly there is a punk rock dynamic that begs for an explosion. Tomorrow, a look at the ingredients to punk chaos.
Yeah, radio saying it's gonna rain. Clouds gonna live us on
punk ain't about playing the right chords, what is it? It's anger, energy, politics. In fact, many of the chords they do play are those of reggae, the syncopated third world liberation music, essentially from the Caribbean. Reggae is replacing punk as a dominant influence in British new wave music.
Put the cheddar in me pocket, put the rest under the jacket. Choke to the cause you won't suspect. And if it does, and if it does.
Week-long look into punk now, with a look at where the punkers buy their bizarre clothes, and we'll find out what role the movement might play in the future of our country.
Until recently, the established record industry has been hesitant to embrace the punk movement. So the bands who have wanted wider exposure have been putting out their own records.
Hi, I'm Bill Rance and alias Vex Billingskate of the Suburban Lawns. This is Sue Tissue, also of the Suburban Lawns. This is our record. Gidget Goes to Hell.
Silver keys, shiny red smoke star, speech your favorite, OBCH. She's not going to school, Surfers rule.
It's been going on so long, and now I feel I'm not that strong. Why can't we win?
Kid punk may indeed be outlandish, but the punkers say it's a lot of hard work and costs a lot of money to look that way.
Nobody likes if they all want to kill him the guard.
Appreciate the noisier side of our music, and then hopefully maybe they will look back into some of the old punk rock bands like Black Flag and Flipper.
I'm an earthworm, I live underground. I'm an earthworm. I'm such a enemy.
It takes a lot of courage to look this way, and that's a very important lesson in democracy, to be able to stand up for your beliefs. I mean, this is training for courage.
Mix all day, binge dry food, TV cake, with my kitchen mortar. Motors, my kitchen mortar. I want to be a fight for the revolution.
Melrose Avenue, West Hollywood, an area where a lot of punkers congregate, live, and shop, with stores geared to the punk look and lifestyle. One of the largest and most successful stores is Posers. Merchandise on hand ranges from armbands to leather jackets to hair dyes and paints.
definitely had a major influence in the eruption of militant anti-corporate activism that first came to light over here in the Seattle protests.
No more.
I can make you cry, get on your knees. My heart is wrong, it's sealed up tight. I got the key and lock, but when I play, then why don't bother, hang around here. Well, I'll let you cry. My heart is wrong, I'm tight. Got the key and lock.
This is part of a recent performance by a New York-based group called The Plasmatics. The band's manager, Rod Swenson, calls this bizarre mix of pseudo-violence and hardcore theatrics comic rock opera.
Okay, baby, they're gonna put you away! It's exhausting! Okay, baby, dressed in red. Okay, baby, messing your head. Okay, baby, go on at night. Okay, baby, turn on the lights! Oh, yeah! Oh, no!
In Cleveland, in Ohio, an obscenity trial is going on there. The trial is to determine if punk rock singer Wendy O. Williams violated Ohio's obscenity laws and allegedly appearing on stage wearing only pants and shaving cream.
The problem with the profit motive model is that most venues, the income is being generated by the clientele. The clientele is the audience. There is no audience for new ideas. So you have to either be referential or genre-centric, whatever, but it's very hard to have new ideas. But punk rock, in my mind, was a place where the people who were involved with it were they were prepared to be the audience for whatever people put on stage.
There are fewer drugs at punk concerts, for example, than there ever were among hippies, because there's a straight edge movement that developed with a band called Minor Threat from Washington, D.C., and their whole thing was, if you read the lyrics, actually, of most of the bands, about half the songs are about to, wake up, think for yourself, and break through your social conditioning.
How do you see yourselves growing up into adulthood, and do you see yourselves getting married and having children and living in society and
worry
going
about
to the bank?
It might not ever even come.
You really
can't worry yourself.
Nothing ever works out the way you
plan anyway.
But don't you want to marry Jimmy Gestapo and have little Gestapos?
Start a little camp in Queens.
But really, don't you want to get married someday?
I can't really think about it. I'm 20 years old.
Back to my name. Six pack. Set the rest up here, so who's to blame? Six pack. They say I'm the fuck of all time. Six pack. When the dudes don't waste of time. Six pack. I know it'll be okay. I get a six pack in me. Alright.
stop and think.
There's a girl named Kate and she thinks she's really great, but she's not. All the boys stare at the girl with blonde hair, it's not fair. When the rich die laughs like the rabbits running from a lucky past full of shallow cunning, and the world lights up for the final day, we will all be poor having had our say.
She's a white girl, but I'm living with a white girl. She's a white girl.
MTV is obnoxious?
I think most of the stuff is pretty trashy. There's a lot of stuff that degrades women.
Checklist for keeping your husband happy. 1. Firm and graceful body. 2. Be at home when he arrives. If you must work, try to arrange it so you're home first. 3. Clothes, sexy for your evenings at home. 4. Be interested in him and the things he does.
Selfish desires are burning like fire among those who want to go, as they continue to keep the people asleep and the truth from being told. Racism and greed will keep the people in need from getting what's rightfully theirs. Cheating, stealing, and double dealing as they exploit the people's fears. I might be famous. I've got no money at all. I can't do this, I can't do that. It's always to the road. So ask them nicely, they won't let me.
Guys do not care. They'll stick it anywhere. Guys are disgusting.
Can you tell me about the changes whether will they turn out right in time?
These are circling in front of my feet. I can make a decision, make a conclusion. Wise expression never leaves.
I like electric light, and I like electric light. Someday I'm gonna get real happy. I'm gonna say just what I feel.
All the boys that think she is so green, captivating everyone. You're not looking forward and you are not looking back. You lost the warranty, you'll never get your money back. My baby's finally another life getting nowhere back.
Shape it up, get straight.
son who's 11. And I was wondering if I should try and stop this now or let him go through with it.
What is he? Stop what? What is he doing?
Well, already he's got this real wild punk haircut. They call it a Detroit. It's like a buzz on top, and it's like 6 inches long in back. But his friends are doing this, and I didn't see any harm in it. But now he comes home wanting his ear pierced every day, and I don't know what to do.
Hey, Mom! I just quit my job!